guys, it's Lexi. So I'm sitting in my car all for the purpose of the fact that we're playing outside today. My grandpa's got the kiddos. I think they went to get a rake, and it's really windy, and I didn't want to have the wind mess up the video, and I wanted to stay outside so I could see the kids and maybe even point the camera towards them here in a bit. So today's video is going to be on our journey, kind of like from the beginning, just like a story of us, for people who may not have known the whole story, haven't been following us the whole time, or just to refresh some people's minds who might have forgotten some things, or just anybody who's curious. So Nick and I, which is my husband, he was just my boyfriend back then, but we found out that we were pregnant August 6th of 2016, and then on Halloween, August 31st, I was really sick, couldn't keep anything down. We went to the ER. This is a funny story. So we went to the ER because I was like so dehydrated. I was puking everything up. And so we went and got, I got the fluids, and they said, well, let's do an ultrasound to make sure the baby's okay. Well, they take me back, and Nick can't go because, you know, it's the ER, so they don't take the significant others back. Well, the lady's like doing her ultrasound thing, you know, doing what she's got to do, and she's like, do you see what I see? And I'm like, playing it off like, no. She's like, you're having twins. And I'm like, I was like crying a lot. And then I get wheeled back to the room. You know, they don't print off pictures in the ER for us or anything. But I get wheeled back to the room, and I'm like bawling, and Nick's like, oh my God, is the baby okay? And he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, there's two. And he goes, what? Like, he just looks at me like, what? Like, what do you mean? There's two? Which we had joked about, like, oh my God, what if I'm so sick because there's two in there or something? Guess so. But we were excited. The very next day was like my first prenatal appointment, but you know, I was so dehydrated the night before that we had called like the doctor's like on call at the hospital for my doctor, and they were like, you know, yeah, you should go in and get some fluids. We'll still see you tomorrow to do like an extra checkup and check other things, you know, but just go get yourself some fluids. So, you know, we went and did that, and then we go to our first appointment, and they're doing like the ultrasound there, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's two, and they're like talking and stuff, and they're looking at us like, why aren't you guys shocked? And we're like, oh, we found out last night. And they were like, oh, that explains why I'm not seeing this look on your face. But it was funny, like, everything was good though, like we heard their heartbeats. It was like the sweetest sound, and like we got to, you know, our little picture to take home, and, you know, everything like that. So it was really cool, and everything was smooth after that. Like, everything went great for the next, I don't know, I was like 7 weeks then. So everything went great for the next, you know, 7-8 weeks. About 8 weeks later, we went to like a preview, like peekaboo place that you can pay like to do like 3D and, you know, find out gender and all that stuff. And we found out that, well, they did a, like they took the gender of them and put it in like envelopes and then sealed them. And then we gave those to a friend of mine named Emily. And then she filled 2 Star Wars piñatas because Nick wanted Star Wars theme for everything, of course. So she filled the Star Wars piñatas with either pink or blue. And then that's how we were supposed to find out. You know, we had like a gender reveal on my husband's birthday for his 22nd birthday. We had like a big gender reveal thing, and then all of our family, a few friends come over, and then we pull the little things on the, because it was like piñatas that you like pull the string and it like lets go everything. The first one popped out, and it was gonna be a boy, and then the second one popped out and it was gonna be a girl. So we got our boy and our girl, and we were so excited. Later that day we went to Kohl's and bought them both their first outfits, and then after that we went to dinner for my husband's birthday, you know, and celebrated with some of our friends, which was really cool. And then everything just seemed to keep going smoothly. We went to like a our official like gender scan, like the anatomy scans or whatever, and they said, you know, they're a little small, but we're not at 20 weeks yet, so just come back in 2 weeks and we'll redo it. But yes, for sure they are a boy and a girl. And we'll just, you know, just redo the scan in a couple of weeks to make sure that they are where they need to be, because we generally don't do the anatomy scans at 17 weeks. I'm not sure who scheduled you, you know, like they, you know, they did all that. And we were like, yeah, that's cool. So we went back at 20 weeks, and or no, 21 weeks is when we went back, because they didn't have like an opening at 20 weeks. So we went back to the high risk people at 21 weeks, and they were they didn't say anything. Like, they did all the stuff. They said, this is cool, this is good, this is good, this is good. And then when they were checking like my cervix, they stopped. They didn't say anything. She's like, I need to go get the doctor, which they'd never done before. The doctor comes back and tells me that my cervix was funneling. So, you know, normally it's just like, you know, regular, you know, like regular cervix, but mine was starting to look like a big U and starting to like a tornado funnel, you know. That's how they described it. So it meant that everything was opening up, and it, you know, that's way too soon. Well, then they told us we could be in a, they rushed us off to another, like the main hospital, because we were at just like one of the other campuses, and they rushed us off to another hospital, and they said, oh, so you can be in a research study and either get this placebo, this, or a placebo, or nothing, and we're not sure what will work, or what you get until you get it, and we'll pay you for every visit you come in, and you know, that kind of stuff. But to us, it was like, no, we want you to do something for us, like do the cerclage, do something, you know, like that's just all we kept saying. And they told us, no, you can do the research study, or we're not doing anything, because nothing is proven to work. And we're like, well, hundreds and thousands of other women have had the other things that, you know, they've had them and they've helped them. Please do something for us to help our babies. They said no, and then that doctor basically was the main doctor that controlled all the little high-risk people around. So they were like, oh, you can't go anywhere else to get another opinion, because they're all doing this research study for twins or whatever, twin parents and stuff. And I was like, well, this is stupid. Like, they told me just to go home. Bed rest wasn't even proven to work, so don't even do it. Well, we went home, and I put myself on bed rest. I mean, I got up and I did some stuff, you know, here or there. I mean, I was already basically on bed rest, like a lot of stuff like that, like on bed rest and light duty and all that kind of stuff from the very beginning, because I was just having a real hard time. But I put myself on like complete bed rest, got up to pee, got up to grab something to eat, but laid down the rest of the time. Mainly because I was home alone a lot. I had to get up and do stuff. And then I remember the following week we needed groceries, and I needed to get out of the house for a little bit, and I just wanted to pick out a couple of things. And you know, the doctor had told me it would be fine, so we went to the store, and I remember standing there holding on the cart, leaning on it like I was in a lot of pain, and I said, Nick, something's wrong, we need to go home. I said I need to lay down and I need to call the doctor. Well, I called them. They called me back the next morning because nobody had gotten my message or something. Because I said it felt like there's a foot in my, well, you know, like the vaginal canal. I said it feels like there's a foot in there kicking me inside of there, like it hurts, and I don't know what's going on. So they called me early the next morning and said, we think you're in labor, you need to come in. So we rush to the Sydney hospital. The doctor rushes in, checks me, and says I'm 3 centimeters dilated, and that Tessa's sac was actually bulging out. So she's like, we need to rush you to Miami Valley. They can stop your labor, or they might not be able to. We just gotta get you there and see what they can do. Terrified, you know, Nick's not even allowed in the squad with me, because, or my grandma, like nobody's allowed in the squad with me. They said because they said it was because if something happened, they needed all the room they could have to take care of the babies, but there was nothing they could do if they came out in the squad because they were not equipped for such teeny tiny babies. So we finally get to Miami Valley, and I had went from a 3 just in Sydney, got to Miami Valley, and I was a 4, still bulging. But they said my contractions had stopped, so they decided to just admit me and then, you know, like watch me over the next few weeks, or you know, until I had them. So I was 22 weeks then, and then over the next 2 weeks I suffered through lots of pain, lots of sickness, heating pads, you know, meds that they could give me, everything they could do to stop labor. A week after we got there, and the neonatologist come in, it's the little tiny baby doctor, and he said, if they come now, we can't save them. If they die, we are not resuscitating. And I remember wanting to punch him in the face, because, like, why wouldn't you save my babies? But we understood. I mean, it was just hard, and so we were gonna try to do everything we could to keep them, you know, right where they were. We did everything. Well, then about a week later, I had to call Nick, and he had to rush home because my Killian's water broke, and he was like at the top, and it went around Tessa. And there was a little poke hole, like a little hole in it, and it was coming out. So they rushed me down to like actual labor and delivery from like the maternity like ward or whatever, and then put me on magnesium, which, if you've never been on magnesium, imagine yourself standing in front of a train, and that train plowing over you. That's how it felt. I was in pain. I was sick. I felt hot. I felt cold. I felt like I was dying. Poor Nick was up all night with me. He made it from work. He rushed in from work, and he was there with me all night. And I felt so bad because he was just like, he was so tired the next day. And then they gave him a couple, I think 1 or 2 days off after that, just to be with me. And then he went back to work because everything was fine. Everything went okay after that. And they had discussed, you know, like, if the kids stay in, you can maybe go home and stay on complete bed rest, and or you can stay here, and since, you know, his water broke, we don't want to have an infection, so we'll deliver you at 34 weeks, which would, if the kids would have stayed in at exactly 34 weeks, would have actually been me and Nick's 5-year anniversary, which would have been kind of funny. But we, you know, we were like, yep, well, you know, let's see what we can do. Let's try to keep him in. Everything was going pretty smooth after that. Like, we went to, back to our regular room. I was so bored. I crocheted. My grandparents came. Nick's parents came. I think his grandma came. His grandparents came a couple of times. All of that time is really fuzzy to me because, like, I shut it out. I don't want to think of it. I don't want to remember it because it was a scary time for me. I was terrified, and I still am of that time. Like, it's just not something that I like to think about a whole lot. A friend of mine named Becca it was like, I don't know, I called her crying. I was just having a really bad day. I called her crying at like 10 o'clock at night or something, and she come all the way from, you know, out in the country, an hour away, and come and sat with me until like 4 a.m. when Nick got off work. We watched movies, and she sat with me, and it was really cool because, like, I didn't expect her to, you know, stay with me while I'm sitting in the hospital, or she just sat there till 4 a.m. when Nick walked in the door, and she said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go, and, which, thank you, Becca, if you're watching this, I really appreciate it. That made it a lot better. And a couple of days later, like, Nick had like 2 days, Nick had like 2 days off or something. Or like he worked morning one day, or, you know, something like that. Like, he worked morning and had like that night off. And then over the next 2 days, no, it was the second day that he had off, and then the next morning he was supposed to go back to work. His dad had made this cake that I had bought at the grocery store, you know, from when I was like, Nick, something's wrong, we need to go home. I had bought this really cool chocolate fudge cake that I really wanted because it was, you know, I'm pregnant and I want fudge cake. So Nick's dad made it and brought it in for me to eat some because, you know, I'm stuck in a hospital. And I ate it and I puked it up. And I don't know if it was I puked it up because I went into labor, like it hit me kind of labor, or if I puked it up and that's what caused the labor. Like, we don't know like what pushed me back into labor, but all I know is I had Nick get the doctor, or like the nurses and stuff, and I was like, something's wrong. I feel like I've got to push, and that's not what you want to feel, you know. I was 24 weeks and 4 days that day. Or no, 24 weeks and 3 days. And, you know, it was like 10 o'clock at night. They rushed me down because they're like, you're 5 centimeters now, and they can come out at 7, and it doesn't look like you're stopping anymore. They'll fall out at 7 because they're so tiny. And they were both butt first. They did an ultrasound to find that, and they both decided they didn't want to come. They were like laying on top of each other, like they didn't want to come out, you know, the regular way. So we, they're rushing me down to like the labor and delivery where they start getting everything ready. And this nurse goes flying by, and she's on the phone, and she's like, yeah, so give me a couple hours and I can come do that. I'm going to get this woman prepped for her C-section. Which I hadn't been told anything. Like, she's having her babies. Like, they had talked about trying to stop everything in my room. But they hadn't told me I was having a C-section yet. Like, they didn't explain any of that to me. They was going to do it when we got to the big labor and delivery room. Well, we get down in there, and this lady's, you know, flying by saying that on the phone, and walks right into my room, and then I get pushed into that room. And my favorite nurse, I don't remember her name, but I remember her face. She was the sweetest. She goes, did you hear that? Your babies are going to be here. She says, I'll be here when you come back. That was my favorite, like, nighttime nurse. She was so sweet. And then, I get in there, and Nick's calling everybody. He's calling, my his parents and my grandparents, and then by that time we had like nobody left to call, we had no time to call anybody, because they were rushing us out of there to, they got us all prepped and was like, let's go. And my grandparents and his parents made it right before they wheeled me out to get cut open. Nick got ready. He sat in there, held my hand the whole time. He took pictures with my phone, so I have pictures of everything. Might not be what everybody likes, but I treasure them pictures. And I just remember I couldn't feel anything from my arms down. And I remember Nick going, Tessa's out, she's okay. And I'm like, they cut me open already? Like, I didn't feel a thing. I didn't even know what was going on. I couldn't see. And then they got Killian, he came out, and they got everything else. They was working on me, and then they had rushed. We couldn't even see the kids. As soon as they came out, they were gone into another room to get their stuff started. And then Tessa was born at 24 weeks, 4 days, at 12:09 a.m. at 1 pound, 4 ounces. And Killian was born at 24 weeks, 4 days, at 12:10 a.m. at 1 pound, 9 ounces. So, it was a lot of everything, going on. So, we got to, 4 hours later, I went into, the recovery room, and they're going over a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to, recover from just having they consider that a major abdominal surgery. And I'm going, recovering from that. I'm having people come in and out of my room, and I'm just so sick, and I don't want to focus on any of them people coming in and out of my rooms. I want to be with my kids. I knew I couldn't, but I couldn't focus on anybody, and I was just so done. Well, then, a little bit later, they said, okay, we need to take you to your room. Your kids aren't stable yet, so we can't take you back there, but we do need to take you and teach you how to use the breast pump, because you're not going to be able to nurse for quite a while. So they rushed me back there and teach me how to use the breast pump, which I didn't get anything out the first time, but I had stuff by the next morning, which was cool. And then I had a lot of milk, but I think it was 4 a.m. they come and got us and said, you can go see them now. And I remember I still had they gave me a catheter because, during surgery. I remember just picking it up and hopping off my bed and walking to the wheelchair, and they're all looking at me I was like, I just want to go see my kids, let's go. So we get down there, they're so tiny. They're so itty bitty. So many wires, so many tubes. It was scary. Their eyes were still fused shut because they weren't even, not supposed to be born yet. Over the next, that day, because, it was 4 a.m., a little bit later, I said, okay, everybody, you guys got to get out of here, because, our families were there. I said, I just need to go to bed, for a little bit. I'm so tired. And then the next day, which was still technically the same day, we went down there. We got to help, pour breast milk in, a tube, because they did, gravity feeds, because they got, 1 milliliter, which, if you don't know, that's, not a lot at all, 1/30 of an ounce. So we got to do that. We got to change their diapers. We got to do, all that kind of stuff, and take lots of pictures and see them. And then everything was going real good. They was like, yeah, we're really impressed. They're doing really great. And then the next day, we're sitting in Killian's room, and his monitors are going off. Everything's going off. All the numbers are dropping. and his lung was failing. So all the doctors and everybody rushed in. So we like rushed over to Tessa's room so that we could give them some room, and they would come in and talk to us in a minute, you know, or whenever they got done. And they told us what happened and said that, you know, we're gonna get him taken care of. He'll be okay. He's gonna need some time. They put him on some special machines, like an oscillator and that stuff. And then that same day, I go to my room to get some food, and Nick goes home to change and stuff like that. And I get a phone call that they did like the heart ultrasounds on the kids, and Tessa had fluid around her heart. And if they didn't get the fluid out, it was going to kill her. So they had to stick a needle in and get the fluid out. The doctor called me back and was like, she's doing okay. There's nothing to worry about. I got it. It was coming out of one of her lines, because they, instead of putting like PICC lines and IVs in at that point, they actually put them through like their arteries and stuff in their umbilical cords. So they had to take her umbilical lines out, and then they put a PICC line in, and they did the same for Killian. And then at 7 days old, or at 6 days old, I got to hold Tessa. The coolest thing. She was so tiny. Like, I picked her up from the isolette and put her onto me. It was the best thing ever. And then the next day during rounds, the doctor's like, why don't we let Mom hold Killian? So a little bit later, when the nurse is done doing rounds and, you know, all that stuff and getting things ready, we're getting him ready to get him. He was laying on his belly, and we've turned him over to, you know, get him up and hold him. His stomach was black. They weren't sure what was going on. They thought it was neck, which is like, you know, like necrotizing fasciitis. I think that's what neck goes along with, like the dead bowel. 'Cause it, you know, you have it in like all the other things. Well, they said they thought it was neck, which is like a big thing in the NICU, where you get a perforated bowel and then get a real bad infection in there, and it like kills a lot of kids, where it makes them have like ostomies. I couldn't think of the word. Luckily, we didn't end up with anything like that, but 3 days later they found in a x-ray, they found the perforation, and a doctor from Children's come over to Miami Valley and did a surgery. They put like a drain in there, which everything would come out of that drain after that, and slowly his stomach got clearer, and it turned, you know, back to regular color after he got bigger. But that was scary. And then a couple weeks later, they do the head ultrasounds, and we find out that they both have brain bleeds, and that Tessa's was really bad and that she needed brain surgery. And I remember standing there while they're talking about doing brain surgery on my tiny 1 pound 6 ounce little girl, and I passed out on the floor. Tessa's nurse and Nick had to help me, and, you know, her nurse was like, I don't work on adults, you know. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be okay. It's just a shock. So they needed to transfer her to Children's to do the surgery, and then she had her first shunt-like thing. The first thing was a reservoir that they could like stick a needle in, pull some extra spinal fluid off, because the problem with having the brain bleed, it was causing her spinal fluid to build up because it couldn't be absorbed, so they had to get it out of there somehow. And then, you know, eventually she got like a shunt, and then that one broke, and then she got another shunt. And then over the next few months too, like, I'm not going to go big in detail anymore because this is getting to be a long video, but like the next few months, Killian got laser eye surgery because he had retinopathy of prematurity. His was pretty bad. and they wanted to do the laser surgery to prevent him from being blind. And then Tessa had it, but it wasn't as bad, so they just left it how it was. So he had his laser eye surgery, and she had her 3 shunt surgeries in the hospital, and then Killian had hernias. You know, he was diagnosed with chronic lung disease, his tongue was too big, too, so, like, we were going through everything with, like, genetics, and all kinds of craziness. And then, the doctors come, and they're like, you know, we can let you guys go home, or let Tessa go home on Friday. This was like a Wednesday. So I, like, called Nick at work, and I was like, you're gonna have to take the next few days off, because, like, Tessa's coming home Friday. And he's like, oh my god. And we had nothing ready at home, so he took the next couple of days off. We went and spent a ton of money getting the last few things we needed, and got everything ready. And then Thursday, when we went in to visit, they said, do you want to take Killian home tomorrow with Tessa? And we're like, duh. So we went home and got everything ready for him too, and they was like, we'll just have his oxygen delivered when you get home. They had tanks delivered so we could take him, and then they was gonna bring, like, the concentrator and all the other stuff to the house, because he needed to be on oxygen for quite a while. And so we went home on 7/7/17, which I thought was cool. We missed the nurses. They were great. A lot of them became family. I sat there and crocheted, read the kids' books, talked with the nurses, did arts and craft. Like, the nurses helped me with some crafting for the kids, like with their footprints, and I made, like, scrapbooks and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And then everything was going great at home. You know, they were great, growing perfectly. And then one day my sister came over to, like, meet the kids, and we needed to go to the store, so she was going to go with me to just to kind of help me out with pushing a cart, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we put the kids in their car seats, and Killian's starting to turn purple. And we turned up his oxygen. I called 911. His sats were in the 50s, which was really bad. They need to be in, like, high 90s and to 100. And so we rushed to Children's, and his lung had collapsed. They got it, you know, back to where it needed to be on some, you know, higher oxygen, weaned him back down. He was doing great. So we went back home 2 days later, and it happened again. So they admitted him back into the NICU for like a week, and he was on, like, really high flow oxygen, like 6 liters, which is, like, really high. And we went through that. It was so scary. We thought he needed, like, a car seat bed, and, like, it was crazy, because they thought his tongue was causing all the issues. We ended up not finding out exactly what happened in that car seat, or what happened that caused that to happen. But it was awful. But he got better. We went home again, and no issues for a while. That was in the end of, like, July, early August. And then everything was going great after that for a couple months. And then November, everything's perfect, kept going. Well, after November, from November to, like, February-ish, right after their first birthday. Well, I think before their first birthday, something like that. I had called because I had noticed on, like, their My Chart for Children's, you could see, like, the growth stuff. Hers was, like, Tessa's was, like, steady, like, within, like, grams of each other, like, not growing. And so there went more, you know, fighting. And in between there, too, we're seeing a geneticist to get Killian diagnosed with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, which is an overgrowth syndrome and stuff, and I'll talk about that in another video. I don't want to go too in depth with it because this is already 35 minutes. Like Tessa wasn't growing. She slowly stopped eating as much formula, and, you know, didn't want solid foods. Like, she was just not having it for anything. So we went to the pediatrician, and she's like, let's do some weight checks because I have to have more data to give GI. And then GI had called and was like, we'll get her in June. So we went and did weight checks. We did feeding therapy. The feeding therapist actually graduated Tessa and said she was doing fine, which she wasn't. She was actually starting to lose weight. So, like, Nick and I had gotten engaged in April, and we got married in May. Or no, we got engaged in March and got married in May. Which is because he wanted to join the military, and so we got married quick so he could, you know, go off. We got married on our 6-year anniversary. But, like, 2 days, or a couple days before our wedding, we went to the doctor, and she had lost 6 ounces, which in a baby, that's a lot. So they sent that to GI. GI called us, and they was like, we can get her in on Monday. So 2 days after our wedding, we go in, and she gets, sees the GI, and they admit her straight from there. It was like, she needs an NG tube, which is a feeding tube down the nose. So we did that, had all kinds of fun with that. And in between all of this, like, from the time we got out of the NICU and everything, the kids had both started physical therapy. Tessa was in occupational therapy. We had suspicions of cerebral palsy. Like, it was a lot was going on. But then Nick did his enlistment stuff and then ended up leaving June 5th. But June 1st, June 1st, you know, Tessa's doing great with her feeding tube. So June 1st, we go in for her, we go in for her first, like, cerebral palsy clinic, and they diagnose her with spastic hemiplegia, cerebral palsy. And then we go from there to, like, 4 days later, Nick's gone in the Navy. And then fast forward 2 weeks before he graduates boot camp, Tessa went in, and because, like, she was puking all the time, and her GI doctor was like, well, if it's okay with you, let's do a G-tube, which is the feeding tube in the belly, which I'll do a video on those too. She was like, yeah, that's fine, let's go ahead and do it. So we scheduled that. That was August 3rd. So we went in and got her G-tube done, and then 2 weeks later Nick graduated boot camp, so we went out to Chicago and, you know, got to see him, and it was great. And then we slowly got to the point to where like, we moved to Chicago. Like, during all of that too, we got Tessa put on, like, real foods through her G-tube, which she started growing better, doing better. So this is, like, a real messy video, and I'm so sorry. But we moved out to, you know, close to the base, in a little town called Gurnee, which, well, it's not a little town, and it's technically called a village, but it had a ton of people in it, so it's not like a village from, like, here, where there's, like, 300 people. But we went and did that, and we lived there so Nick could continue with schooling and stuff, and we went to, like, the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, for all of our specialists and everything, and they were great. Everything was going perfect. Like, it was great. We went through Christmas and Thanksgiving in our new house. And then in January, right before like the negative 50-degree weather, the kids got the flu, so we're taking them to the ER to get some fluids because we just couldn't get them any fluids, and the doctor had told us, take them in, get some fluids, keep us updated. On the way, Tessa had a seizure. So for the next 9 days, we were in the hospital. Tessa was having multiple seizures. She coded. One time she was in the ICU, unconscious. It was a lot. Nick couldn't get leave, so Grandma came all the way from home to watch Killian for me so I could stay with Tessa in the hospital. And then there was a snowstorm coming, so they were like, if you can take care of her at home and you think she's fine, like she's doing well on her medications, we can send her home and then come back if there's any issues or anything, which she's done perfect since then. And then a month later they turned 2. Tessa got her first walker, and then in June she got her first wheelchair. July we came back to Ohio while Nick is in California for some training for C school, and then we're going here in about a month to Virginia for our next duty station. So far, you know, everything's going great, and no new diagnoses as of yet. But everything's going great. We're doing great. I missed quite a lot in there. Like, Killian got off oxygen at 11 months. They both were in speech for a while. Killian was like not completely nonverbal for a while. But now he's starting to actually, you know, say some words, do some things. They have suspicions of some kind of a speech disorder, which I'm not going to talk about until we know more for sure. Tessa has an iPad that has a speech app on it that she uses to talk. I think that's really it. This video is getting really long, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. If anyone has any questions, or if I missed anything and I want to add it later, I'll add it later. But right now, I'm hungry. My kids want me to come with them. So I'm going to get off here. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.